Greetings, everyone, and welcome. November the 14th, 2025, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 1:30 a.m. in Kyiv. Yes, there were additional Kindle strikes tonight on air bases inside Ukraine, but as of right now, the air is relatively quiet. As you can see in the thumbnail and the title, we're talking about the gold standard of double standards. Zelensky, this is insanity. I have 4 video clips for you tonight about different things, but we're going to start right from the beginning with 10 seconds inside this clip from Zakharova, which is nothing but a double standard. And most people have missed it, but I didn't. I heard what she said. I translated it into English for you, and you're not going to believe it. Of course, her comments aimed at the United States, as the title says. Thank you for being here. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, doing all of those things. We appreciate each and every one of you, and you help us get the message out and grow every day. So, 10 seconds, double standard. We're going to talk tonight about Zakharova. Then I have Mearsheimer. I've got interesting video from a Turkish boat. And then I know that's Jens Stoltenberg, but Rutte's been kind of quiet over the last week or so. Stoltenberg's trying to sell a book, but he did come out today and make a statement that needs to be said, and I want you to hear it. So let's jump right in. We'll start with Zakharova. Here comes the whole clip. I'm going to stop it. It's near the beginning. Listen very, very closely.
We insist that combating drugs should not be used as a leverage against sovereign states. We stand against the force or use of force in order to interfere into domestic affairs.
Stop. We stand against the use of force to interfere into domestic affairs. This is the nation that is bombing Ukraine into oblivion every day. Now, they are using this statement because they're coming against the operation that Pete Hegseth just announced going into Venezuela, or the actions in the southern hemisphere, whatever that will turn out to be. Of course, Russia is a big ally with Venezuela, a supplier to Venezuela of arms and defense systems. They have a deep relationship, partnerships, economic agreements, military exchange agreements. They have it all. But do you hear the double standard here? Here we go again.
We insist that combating drugs should not be used as a leverage against sovereign states. We stand against the force or use of force in order to interfere into domestic affairs. And we assume that when it comes to combating drug trafficking, primarily in the U.S., what is needed is the consolidation of international efforts as well as regional efforts. And the efficient solution could be found within the collective efforts and within the international legal mechanisms, and naturally only in case of abandoning this large-scale military pressure that Pentagon has been using.
Okay, so guys, that's enough of that mess, but it's the double standard. Everything Russia doing against Ukraine, they're now declaring that the United States cannot do. The United States needs to go and try to talk and have conversations, work with regional partners, work with other nations, work with the nation that you have a conflict with. None of that happened between Russia and Ukraine, still not happening between Russia and Ukraine, and most likely is not going to happen between Russia and Ukraine in the near future. So what we see here is a complete double standard of foreign policy. It's not okay for the United States to go and attack. It's not okay for the United States to do an offensive operation. It's not okay for the United States to violate the borders of another sovereign state. But it is okay for us to do it. And you could insert any nation there, the United States. It doesn't matter. The statement is you can't do it. While at the same time, that is exactly what Russia is doing. Now, I want to go to the next interesting clip here. This is coming out of Mearsheimer. Of course, he's very, very pro Russia going to win. He's making some statements here, and I'm calling this 50-50 on Mearsheimer because he does talk about Ukraine having some advantage on the home turf, as others have talked about. Even Sean Penner was talking about that on my live the other day with him. Here you go.
February will be a 4-year-old war. So we're past the 3.5-year point mark now. We've already had a long war. And what's going on here is that Putin understands that given the formidable defensive positions that the Ukrainians have been fighting from in eastern Ukraine, the fact that they've been fighting from these cities and that the Russians have to go into cities and reduce the Ukrainian forces in there, he runs the risk of the Russian army suffering massive casualties.
Okay, we're going to stop right there. That's actually accurate analysis. Putin knows. I don't know what Putin knows or does not know, but that is accurate. Ukraine, good fortified positions, defensive positions in these cities, and it will require massive cost for Russia to come against Ukraine, whether it's Kramatorsk, Konstantinivka, what we're seeing in Pokrovsk, Kupiansk, Kharkiv, Sumy, Zaporizhia, and the list can go on and on. Now let's continue to listen.
And the last thing that Putin wants to do is see huge numbers of Russians coming back in body bags. So what he's done is he's moved in a very slow and deliberate way, and he's substituted firepower for manpower in his strategy for winning this war. And when you do that, it's going to take much longer than if you just go charging forward with, frontal wave attacks.
Let's pause there. We got 20 more seconds on the Mearsheimer statement. This is what we're seeing. We're even seeing European nations like Poland and others telling the world Ukraine is preparing for 3 more years of war. Zelensky himself over the last few days talking about 3 more years of war. And this is what Mearsheimer is saying. When you take all of these statements, when you take all of this outside look in, mix it with the inside understanding, we see, look, here's the air alarms right now. We're seeing nonstop increase of air attacks, drone warfare, robotics, everything looking long-term, not short-term. Mearsheimer accurate here. And of course, Putin not wanting all the body bags home. Of course, I don't want to get into internal what they do or not do. We see that. But the reality is, if that happens, then we're talking about the possibility of Russia being destabilized. And I remind you that for complete victory, Putin and that Kremlin empire inside that Kremlin fortress, and that's what Kremlin means, guys, must fall. There must be a change. There must be a switch. That's the internal. And then, of course, you have the external, and that is the war in Ukraine. Let's continue with Mearsheimer.
So it has taken quite a bit of time because he is minimizing casualties. That's why you want to remember that all these claims that the Russians are suffering enormous casualties, they're bleeding themselves white, are false. That's not happening because the Russians are behaving in a very deliberate way.
So that's why I call this video from Mearsheimer 50-50. So we had 10 seconds of Zakharova and 50-50 on Mearsheimer. Listen, they're losing a lot of manpower, they being Russia. But I want you to understand, Ukraine is as well. It's a very expensive war on both sides. The price of human life. It's just a fact. Now, last night, the huge strike in Novorossiysk, I was giving you that as it was happening. We turned out to be relatively accurate that it was a large strike. 2% of global oil production and distribution comes through that pipeline. It's been affected. Oil prices went up. Everything we were accurate on. But interesting video coming in today from a Turkish ship. And I've used a little AI because I do not know Turkish or have anybody that can confirm it, but just Take a peek at this. This is the warfare that is happening in Ukraine and in Russia. This is Novorossiysk. It's been going on for an hour, he said. They've hit a ship, they've hit a refinery. Just listen. Ladies and gentlemen, this was a massive strike. You're going to see a drone and some anti-air gunfire in a minute, but I took off the end explosions. I'm trying to stay safe on YouTube for what I can share with you guys. There's air defense going up in between the two places for the strike. Look at that air defense. That's going after drones. Just listen, you'll hear the drone. Listen, there it is. There it is. Drone, and boom. We stop with the audio there. The drone actually was destroyed. It actually ran into a crane, he went on to say. That's the warfare going on, guys. It's massive. And you can see that long-range strike. This is what Zelensky was deciding. This is what Russia does to Ukraine. Mixture of drones and missiles. And that is why that attack was so successful in Novorossiysk. It was a mixture of drones and missiles. Now, we know that over the last 48 hours, a lot of talk going on about corruption in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, I will tell you, there is corruption in Ukraine, but there's also corruption in every nation on the planet, no matter where you are from. Ukraine fighting a multi-frontal war, not only military against the invading nation, but also in propaganda, also against corruption, global perspectives of what Ukraine is really about. I've been working there for 28 years, and I can tell you they're fighting hard against it. And Jens Stoltenberg made a very accurate statement. And I think it was this evening, and I want you to hear it as we close out.
I know also that President Zelensky really works hard to fight corruption, and we should support him in those efforts. But the right response is not to reduce support to Ukraine. The right response is to continue to provide substantial economic and military support to Ukraine, and then help him in fighting corruption, because it's urgent and it's important for us that Ukraine succeeds in stopping the Russian aggression.
Ladies and gentlemen, I showed you some crazy talk, whether it's from Zakharova or the 50-50 on Mearsheimer, but that statement from Stoltenberg was 100%, in my opinion, spot on accurate. Support Ukraine. Help them fight this war on all fronts. They are developing. They're breaking out. They're fighting for their future, their freedom, and we must stand with them. Thank you for standing with us as we stand with Ukraine. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. Thank you for fighting for truth and looking and hunting for it as we all do together. We will continue. Make sure you have that notification bell on, and if you haven't subscribed, please consider it if you find this information valuable, and we thank you for all that you do. We'll be back very shortly.